Hey guys, thanks for joining us for another episode of V-MODA at Home with. And today we're talking with the legendary Morgan Page. How you doing, Morgan?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So you're a two-time Grammy-nominated artist, and you're somebody. I'm from LA, and I've lived here basically my whole life. And to know that you live in the same city as I do is such an honor.
Oh, nice. That's awesome, man. Yeah, this is my new home now. I mean, I've been here for I think 18 years now. So I've been here as long as I was in Vermont when I grew up in Vermont and then went to college. So
Amazing.
this is officially my home. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's really cool. When and where did you start out?
I started. Everything kind of came through radio. So I started. I heard stuff on the radio, on college radio, because that was the only place you could hear electronic music. So I heard it on the radio. I was naive enough to think I could make music that was as good as what I was hearing on the radio, or maybe better. So I tried to make my own music. That led to DJing in college radio because you didn't have to be a student in Vermont, at the University of Vermont, so you could do a mix show. And then that led to internships at record labels, and then that led to record deals. So that's the process. Just started with one audition for a radio show.
Wow. So it was more of a gradual process of growth for you rather than a single turning point.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody thinks there's this eureka myth of like you have this overnight, this switch just flips, but it's really a lot of concentrated effort and passion over time. But it doesn't come from nowhere, right? It has to be maybe part of your personality drives that process.
Sure. And when was that sort of point that you were like, okay, this could be more than just a side hobby or a passion of mine? When did you know that this could be your career?
Well, I never thought it was a viable career. I think when I was a kid, I saw these DJ mix compilations come out and saw that DJs were being flown around the world. And that just seemed like this insane thing. I didn't think it would be possible. And I think you have to be a little naive to even have the confidence to try and get in it. So the point where I realized it was a thing and it was a full-time job, I don't know. I think when I recognized the feeling of what it felt like to stay up all night working on a remix or an original, something clicked. And it was just the goosebumps and the excitement. And you just kind of felt that in your blood. I didn't know if it would be viable, but I thought this is something I have to go after.
When was sort of that first early experience? Was there a show that you've played? Or what was that first moment where you were like, this is what I want to do?
It was in my parents' basement in a studio that I had in high school. And I had an MPC 2000. I had the basic gear I'd scrapped together. I couldn't afford turntables at the time. I couldn't afford the Technics 1200s. So I think the cost of these things, it was much more expensive to get into making music back in the late 90s.
Mm.
So, I mean, now it's a lot cheaper, even though laptops are still expensive. But you either had to be like a drug dealer to have that kind of money or have some rich parents, and I was neither. so, so it was gradually just saving up money from like mowing lawns and things. But I think, yeah, that the feeling came early, and then later on, I think it took a while for me to. I think it was when Deadmau5 did the remix of Longest Road. That
Mm.
was like, oh, okay, this just shifted. Now you have permission to tour, and people are taking you seriously and not blowing you off. That was when things really shifted.
Who was your biggest influence that really kind of, so growing up in Vermont, how did you get into dance music?
The only way to get into it was hearing it on college mix shows, and then some of the pop stations had these graveyard shift radio shows where from 4 to 6 a.m. they would play a pre-recorded mix show, and it was so funny because I remember I would like stalk the DJs with my music, and I just idolized these guys, and I would call them up, and it'd be funny because they're pre-recorded. I didn't understand that concept for a little while of like they're doing this set in a studio somewhere and then delivering it to the station. I thought they were always DJing live. So it was really funny. Um, but there wasn't a lot of points of discovery back then. It was classic rock and hip hop were dominant, and it was weird to listen to electronic music. It wasn't cool. So
Right.
there was a social barrier to it, and then there was a technology barrier in that there weren't a lot of outlets. There weren't blogs, and MP3s weren't really readily available. That happened more in college
Yeah.
with peer to peer.
So let's talk about that technology shift. So now when you think about music and accessibility and the ability to create music anywhere, that landscape has totally changed. And now getting a laptop, maybe a $600, $700 laptop, and finding a copy of Ableton or Fruity Loops is fairly easy. And that's kind of made it more accessible for younger kids to get into producing. Do you feel like that dynamic of music production being more accessible, has that changed how music is sort of consumed and perceived today?
Yeah, and I think it's created a lot more volume of work. Obviously, it's created, I think, a lot of great material too. I mean, I think we're almost drowning in good material. You don't hear a lot of people talk about how there's too much good music, but I would say that is a side effect of the accessibility. Is there's so much good stuff. You know, how do you separate yourself from everyone else? And a lot of these trends are very cyclical, and sounds come and go, and you have to kind of bob and weave with that. But I think because it's more accessible, even with autotune, I think people can criticize the use of autotune, but like Post Malone says, he's only good at one thing, and that's singing with autotune, and that's worked out pretty well for him.
Yeah.
He didn't have to master everything, and that technology helped him create melodies and compose. And singing with tracking with autotune or using Melodyne is really useful as a compositional tool. So it's not just like improving bad performances; it's envisioning how you hear a melody in your head. So I think that's really cool when you are getting to hear people's authentic selves and the technology is giving them that strength to create like that. It's great.
And
Yeah.
from your point of view, you came up in a more hardware centric sort of era where you said that you started off on an MPC 2000, and you've transitioned obviously into, as many of us have. What was that transition like for you specifically? Like, what was your old setup, and then what was it like kind of coming into that sort of laptop based or desk computer based system?
Yeah. Well, I don't miss the good old days because I don't have a lot of nostalgia for the hardware because it was so limited in terms of sample time. Sometimes the limits were helpful creatively, but you had these drives that would barely hold anything, and overnight a drive would fail and you'd lose all your samples. And it was so I basically had an MPC as the brains, and I had an EMU E6400 sampler, and I had a Nord lead, and everything was kind of triggered by the MPC as the sequencer. There was no DAW. But it's weird because before that, this is the zigzag of the progress. Was I was using a computer using tracking software, is what deadmau5 used as well, a thing called Scream Tracker. And that was almost like programming music in a vertical. It was almost like a player piano on a computer in a way. And it was mainly done for video game demos, things like that. And that was free. Use these little grainy 8-bit samples, but that was really just a whole different way of composing. So I started with the computer, went to the hardware, then went back to the computer. So the hardware had a great sound. I think the cool part with that was you were less focused on the mix down, and things just sounded good to begin with because you were starting with good source material and you didn't layer things too much. You didn't have the opportunity to over layer as much. So I think now the problem in DAWs is that you start stacking things and frequencies start masking and things start peaking, and you're worrying more about your kick drum than like the composition of your song.
That's definitely so true.
Yeah.
If you weren't a musician, what do you think you'd be doing right now?
I think that something artistic. I was always a fan of graphic design, and I loved just anything creatively. I always thought that I would be involved in maybe Silicon Valley, like running a startup or something like that. I think something about me gravitated towards that world, and which has been fun because I've done some projects for Tesla and SpaceX and gotten to know the Musks, and to see that world to kind of merge in the DJ world with the tech world is really interesting. And even now, a big part of what I'm doing is learning other disciplines like video and creating graphics, and how do you merge all these disciplines together.
So talking of merging of disciplines, you started out producing. You didn't start out as a DJ. So how did you transition from being a producer into starting to DJ?
Well, I think I had this crazy moment. I remember doing my first live show. I did it with an MPC and an E6400. I would bring the hardware to the club, which is insane. It's really heavy, and it was so nerve-wracking, and you're sweating, and it sounds amazing, but it's like you're playing unmastered music. but you just hearing your own kick drum on a live sound system right from the sampler is insane. You don't even recognize your own music. So I remember taking that to gigs, but I remember being a radio DJ and being like, okay, this is cool, but I can't see my audience. You get random phone calls. You're kind of like trying to gauge how you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was DJing at WERS in Boston, and you could see people on the street and they would react. You had windows, you could see out and actually see an audience sometimes. But I was always jealous of the DJs that had these coveted slots in Boston. I never really got into those clicks, and it was so cool. These guys just had these really cushy residencies at the clubs, and a lot of them don't DJ anymore or make music. But it was a stage where I was hungry for that excitement and that reaction, but also really nervous about it and thinking like, do I really want to stand in front of hundreds of people or thousands of people and play music? So I took doing the live PA. So I did a tour with that. But people don't want to come see you DJ unless there is some demand and some hype for your original. So I had to produce music long enough to create something compelling that would fuel demand for a live show. And then, but they kind of work together. It's like the live shows when I started to tour after the Deadmau5 remix sort of gave me permission to get out there. That created this demand, and it took longer than I expected. I thought it would be like this Avicii thing where you just sort of turn it around and you're 21 and you tour the world, and usually it doesn't work like that. And even Avicii and Martin Garrix, they've been doing it hardcore for 10 years, producing music. But I think it was a little more of a pure form where starting with producing was a little more pure in the intention of it. Like, I'm doing this because I love it. I'm not doing this to make money or to be famous. That was never a goal. That was a nice micro fame, and all that was a nice byproduct. It was a side effect.
What was that memorable moment? So you got out of radio DJing and you made it onto that stage in front of people. What was your most memorable experience of that?
One of the craziest experiences beyond the first time and hearing your music really loud was playing Red Rocks, playing to 10,000 people for the first time. That was insane. And you're just sort of floating after that. So that's an incredible venue, and to have be playing a full house. I was playing a Global Dance Fest, and it's a really surreal venue because a lot of the clubs start to look the same after a while. But when you can get shows at these more unique venues like the Gorge or Red Rocks, or you're playing at Burning Man, or you're playing Coachella, they're much more unique, and you don't forget those shows.
That sounds amazing. Well, if you had a suggestion to give to a younger artist, and you've been around now for some time, what's some advice that you would give to somebody who is looking to start out, who kind of aspires to do what you do? Is there some wisdom that you would impart to that person? Yeah,
I think the most important thing is creating a volume of work. And I kind of wish someone had told me this earlier, and that you should be doing a song a day, do more if you can. And they don't have to be great, but it's about building this volume of work so you're not as precious with it, and you'll get bored with doing the same sound. So it'll force you to be more innovative, to use different sounds. There's no way around it. Like, if you want to have a big record, you've got to create lots of music. Nobody writes 3 songs and then has one hit. It just, maybe there's exceptions, but nobody makes a hit by themselves either. So there's a really good Rick Rubin quote that you don't get extra credit for doing everything yourself. So you gotta, I think that is absolutely the most crucial thing. You've got to be working on it daily. If you've got a day job, whatever, carve out 2 hours. 2 hours is enough time to get a beat, a chord progression, a lead, maybe mumble a vocal in there. And then you can flesh it out the next day and maybe extend it, but get the basic idea down. But if you don't do that volume, then you're going to be really attached to these songs, and you won't be able to grow, and you're not getting enough hours in. So it's a matter of, you build that volume, and then you're going to create better work.
That's really, really wise. So we've been stuck at home for the past year and some change now. It's been pretty challenging for everybody. How has it been for you? How has the time off from touring sort of been for you?
I think the first part was really tough. It was this almost whiplash reaction of, what the hell do I do? And well, I think the first reaction was thinking, oh, we get back to normal in like 3 months. And people, if we thought it was just, oh, that's a problem happening overseas. I think that was my feeling. And then And then you have to adjust your whole reality. Every couple months, it was like, oh no, it's getting worse. This is long term. Even now with vaccines appearing to be working, and I think it's still like it could be a longer fight with the mutations of this. But early on, I was kind of in denial about it, and then I thought, well, I've got to really take advantage of this time. I want to hit the ground running when this is done. I want to be stronger when I'm back, and I don't want to sit back and just feel sorry for myself, because it's affecting everybody. It's not unique, and no matter if you're a huge superstar that's filling stadiums, they're in the same boat as the artist who's just starting out. So equal, and it could be even worse if you're at that level. You've got a much higher set of bills to pay and a team and a staff. So I had to pull back my team a little bit. I had to let some people go, and that was disappointing and frustrating for people. But I think it's helped me refocus like what my brand is and focus on video. It's been a lot about self-sufficiency, learning video, learning how to troubleshoot everything, doing a live stream. I've been it every week for the past year. So I do a 1 hour stream, and I had to learn OBS and NDI and learn how to make everything communicate, learn videography. So that's been really cool, just getting into that side of it. But I think, yeah, for a while it was like, why do you make music? Music felt trivial when you have, such a horrific pandemic going on. But I think now it feels like everybody's ready to get back to work. Everybody is back at work in a sense. Yeah. Everybody feels a little more motivated, it seems like right now. And I think that now it isn't trivial. It is important. You have to do your art. That, I've heard from first responders that are like, this helps me get through my shift. And it's easy to look at your art as, is this a utility to people? And is this, an essential service? And it really is. It's like music. It can be cliche. You can take it for granted. It's very easy when you're close to it to take it for granted, but you have to keep doing it, and you have to make your art, and it does help people. So it's been cool to have this little tribe of people that watches the stream every week, and they depend on that consistency. But it was also a concern of like, do you release music in such a difficult time? Is it wasting the music? That was a big concern. And I think for the first part, that was a legitimate reality, in that people weren't consuming music as much for a little while, but consumption is definitely back. I think my podcast downloads actually went up during the pandemic. Wow. Because we were really worried because people aren't commuting and they're not going to the gym. But now it seems like the numbers have gotten better, and it's like I'm planning out the next 6 months of releases, so it's time to get the music out.
Absolutely. You talk about live streaming and you talk about OBS, and that's a lot of things that a lot of DJs had to transition into and become their own video producers. What platform have you sort of evolved into, or is there a single platform that you're utilizing for live stream, or are you multi-streaming into different platforms? What's that setup looking like for you?
I've been using Restream and right now, in the beginning, Facebook was the best platform, and then they started cracking down with the copyright takedowns. So my biggest audience is on Facebook versus Instagram and others. So, but now it's turned more into Twitch. So now I'm multi-streaming to Twitch and YouTube and Twitter. So, but I think what we're going to do is start focusing just on Twitch and keeping it loyal to that. And then on-demand episodes will be on YouTube.
Got it. And what's the gear that you're really using right now in terms of DJing?
The biggest thing, well, obviously I've had the V-MODAs the whole stream, and I've tried other headphones, and I keep coming back to the same $200 V-MODAs that I love. So those have been part of the setup here. I have the new Pioneer CDJ 3000s, the DJM 900. I have a computer just running visuals, just running Resolume here, that's been interesting. I had to learn that whole thing. I had to barter to get software too, because I'm like, I don't want to spend $800 on visual software. And then I have a dedicated PC, I have an Alienware PC, just running OBS, just dedicated to encoding the stream. That was a big headache early on, was, beyond the copyright takedowns, OBS is crashing and your uploads are getting throttled because Spectrum and these other providers couldn't keep up with the surge. I think it's gotten much better, it seems like, but it was so frustrating early on. You want to tear your hair out. So I'll do some production streams, and then I'll do the DJ stream. I use an ATEM Mini, which I love, a Blackmagic. I love their whole approach. That's very open ecosystem. So I use a Blackmagic 6K Pocket Cinema 6K camera, a Sony RX100, and a Canon 5D Mark III. So that's been fun. I started with webcams. That's like what I'm using now.
Mhm.
And those are great, like these $70 webcams. But it's been really cool to see the production value of using real DSLRs and real cinema cameras and putting cool like vintage lenses on there. So that's been a fun little rabbit hole I've been exploring. Like make it look different, rather than just the usual green screen streaming setup.
That's amazing that you're doing that all at home. Did you have somebody guide you through kind of what to get, or was that all just you doing research online?
It was a lot of trial and error, just watching the YouTube videos. There's a really cool video by this guy. It's called Make Art Now. And he really inspired me with some stuff. I think it was just seeing that, I could hire people to do it and everybody wear masks and I could be spending thousands of dollars on that, or I could just get the gear and do it myself. It's really hard to do it yourself, but I think now I've set it up so I have macros. So the cameras are switching automatically on their own. So they're going to
Wow.
different angles every 10 seconds. But
That's amazing.
that was funny because that seemed like a very basic feature to have, but it was this advanced scene switcher plugin you had to put into OBS. And there's just so many bugs in these open source programs, but it's been pretty stable now. And now it's been like I've been trying to learn DaVinci Resolve. That's been an amazing program.
Wow.
That's really cool. It's really more advanced than I realized, but once you get the hang of it, so I don't know. It's a lot of hats to wear. It's like, are you a DJ and a producer, or are you a color grader? Like, are you? So, but it's great to learn a little bit of each of these little skill sets, and then maybe step back, take some hats off, and hire some people who know what they're doing.
Sure. I mean, that's the modern DJ, right? It's more than just producing and making music now. Like you've said, you're getting into photography, you're getting into video, you're learning all of these new software programs. That's a lot of education that has to be done. And it's kind of nice that you've got this a little bit of time to go ahead and try to figure things out as we kind of come into 2021. It's still early, but do you have any plans for this year?
This year, I have a baby on the way, so about a month away. Actually, no, 2 months. And I have my second daughter will be on the way. So that's been tricky balancing. I have a 2-year-old right now, and that's been insane. That's obviously a big time sponge. So managing that has been really interesting. So you got to be laser focused with your time. But the plan is, hopefully healthy baby, lock in 6 months of music. I have a book I'm releasing soon for music producers, and I'm so excited for it. So I've done these quick tips for years. About 8 years, I've been compiling these little tweets and little bite-sized tips. So the book is going to be on Amazon, and it's typeset, and I'm just sort of beta testing it with different artists and different disciplines right now. Mm-hmm. So that is exciting. I'll send it to you if you want to check it out. Love your feedback.
Is it called typeset, or is it's?
It's just going to be Morgan Page quick tips. It's basically like a pocket book. It's a book that can fit in your pocket. It's 40 pages. Which sounds really short, but there's a lot packed in there. And it's a lot of universal stuff that applies to different disciplines beyond music. But it's focused at music producers to sort of grease the gears of the workflow and make it more fun, have less suffering in the creative process, and so you can create more work. So
That's so cool.
You know what I mean? Like if you can grease that flow, you can create a greater volume of work. And if you have a better workflow with that, you're going to make better art. So it took me like 20 years to understand that.
Man, that's 20 years of collective experience, though, compact into this really dense sort of pocketbook. As a quick reference guide almost, right?
Yeah, and the idea with that too is because like Ableton's put out a good guide to making electronic music. There's a lot of good books, but they're not accessible. Like if you open it up, you've got to read paragraphs and paragraphs. And I was like, what if we just distill this down to almost little headlines and then just a little blurb underneath? So there's that. That started with tweets. So it's going to be a book. There's also a card deck. So the card deck has a visualization of it. So it's just these clean vector illustrations that it's kind of like the Brian Eno strategy cards, but much more visual and less abstract.
Man, I love this. I love everything about this. It's so awesome.
Yeah, I hope it, and it seems to be, it's really taken off. Like I've gotten great feedback from like Chainsmokers and Zed, and a lot of big producers love it. And what's cool is I think it works for people that aren't, you could be starting out or these could be reminders or sparks of inspiration for the most seasoned producers. Because I always forget about certain technical processes or workflows, and you can't remember everything. So it's little reminders.
That's amazing. And when does that release on Amazon again?
Um, that's a good question. I think it'll be out next month. So I'm going to print some test copies. It'll be a direct publishing thing. So it'll be print on demand, which is fun. So something new I'm going to try out where we've got the book cover, got the graphics, but it's just very simple tips. And I don't have to print up thousands of copies. Just as soon as anyone orders it, it gets printed and shipped.
Wow. What a world.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so amazing. And Morgan, it's been such a pleasure to hear about what you've been up to, and what you're looking forward to in this year. And it's so great to hear you still being super creative and learning new skills. And congratulations on your child from one parent to another.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Nice.
always an exciting thing as
Thank you.
well. But thank you so much for your time today. This was At Home with Morgan Page. Morgan, you got any last words for the people out there?
Last word is just, check out the stream every week. I'm doing the live stream. We'll see how long this goes. I mean, maybe till the pandemic ends. Maybe it'll never stop. But I do every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. PST.
Great.
So that's on Twitch, YouTube, everywhere.
Awesome. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of At Home with. We were speaking with the great Morgan Page. We'll see you guys next time.